Let me introduce myself, I'm Amelia, living in a sprawling house just at the city's edge. I own a pet supplies company and a big retail supermarket focused on pets. Animals? They've been my entire world since I was little. Always found myself caring for some creature or another, which led me to where I am now. It was a cool, crisp evening when James walked into one of my charity events. He was there to write a story, standing awkwardly by the side, holding his notepad like a shield. I walked over, breaking into his space with a smile and a hand stretched out. "Hey, I'm Amelia. Haven't seen you around here before. You new?" He took my hand, a bit surprised, then flashed a quick, somewhat nervous smile. "Yeah, James Mitchell. I'm covering this event for the local paper." "You're Amelia Carter, right? The one who runs all this?" "Guilty as charged," I chuckled, brushing a stray hair from my face. "Hope we're giving you something good to write about." "Oh, definitely." His eyes scanned the room, filled with volunteers and the happy chaos of an event in full swing. "This is impressive, what you've put together." "Thanks. We're all about giving back. Plus, I can't stand seeing animals in trouble. You got pets?" He shook his head. "Travel too much. Wouldn't be fair to the poor thing." We chatted more about the event, and he asked insightful questions that told me he did his homework. His genuine interest was refreshing, and as the night wore on, I found myself looking forward to his calls and texts. Fast forward 6 months, and we're standing under a simple yet elegant arch, exchanging vows. I remember thinking how wild it was that life could throw such good things my way when I least expected it. A year into the marriage, and my business was booming. The house felt even more alive with every stray I brought home. James, ever the intrepid journalist, kept bringing stories of his travels into our conversations, making our dinners lively and full of laughter. One night, I was closing up shop when a lady rushed in, just as I was about to turn the sign to "closed." She was clutching a cardboard box so tightly her knuckles were white. "Excuse me, are you Amelia?" she gasped, out of breath. "Yeah, that's me. What's up?" She thrust the box into my hands. "Found these kittens behind my house. I can't take care of them, but I heard you could help." Peeking into the box, I saw 4 tiny, mewling kittens, their eyes barely open. "I got them, don't worry. They'll be safe here." "Thank you so much." She looked relieved, almost on the verge of tears. "I just didn't know what else to do." After she left, I settled the kittens into a warm blanket in the back, ensuring they were comfortable. That night, as I told James about them, he just shook his head in wonder. "You ever gonna say no?" he joked, pouring us both a glass of wine. "Not when it comes to this. You know that." After the wedding, life started spinning faster than I ever imagined. The business was booming, and James's career as a journalist was on the rise. Every piece he wrote seemed to turn to gold, and his trips became more frequent. Despite the hectic pace, the day we found out I was pregnant was the day everything else seemed to pause, just for a moment. The positive test was like a beacon, cutting through the fog of our daily grind. "James, we're going to be parents," I murmured, my heart hammering in my chest as he swept me into his arms. "Yeah, babe, we are," he whispered back, his eyes bright with something like wonder. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Morning sickness hit me hard, and running the store became a daily challenge. James was supportive, always popping in when he could, bringing me ginger tea and those little crackers that were the only thing I could stomach some days. When Lily was born, it felt like a storm had passed, leaving the world shiny and new. But complications during the delivery cast long shadows. The doctors said I couldn't have more kids, a blunt statement that hung heavy between James and me in the sterile silence of the hospital room. James's disappointment was a quiet thing, but it stretched wide and deep. He tried to hide it, but sometimes I'd catch him staring out the window with a far-off look, or he'd be unusually quiet during dinner. "James, talk to me. Please," I'd plead, reaching for his hand across the table. "I'm fine, Mel, really. Just tired, you know?" But his voice would be flat, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. When Lily turned 1, it was clear she was the light of my life. She had my eyes and James's easy smile. Teaching her to walk, to say her first words, it was a joy unlike any other. But James, he was there but not really. He'd smile and play with her, but his smiles didn't quite reach his eyes. Lately, James had started taking more business trips alone and was often late coming home from work. This shift left me with quieter evenings, which I spent nurturing Lily. She was my little ray of sunshine in the increasingly gray days of my marriage. At just 5, she was already reading children's books and even little notes I left around, which I wrote to spark her curiosity and love for learning. Our bond was my solace. As for James and me, our relationship had cooled considerably. He had taken to sleeping in another room, claiming he needed to get up early for work without disturbing me. My attempts at conversation, trying to bridge the widening gap between us, were met with curt responses or tired dismissals. It was past midnight when I was jolted awake by Lily, her small hands shaking me urgently. Her face was lit with a mix of fear and excitement as she tugged at my arm. "Mommy, come quick. There's a baby outside, I couldn't bring him in, he's too heavy," she blurted out, breathless from either the run up the stairs or the weight of her discovery. I was half in a dream, not fully grasping her words. "A baby? Lily, it's probably just your imagination. Let's get you back to bed." But she was insistent, pulling me with more strength than I thought her little hands could muster. "No, Mommy, he's real. I saw him at the front door." Reluctantly, I followed her down the stairs, my mind racing. At the door, there it was, undeniable and shocking. A baby boy, wrapped snugly but abandoned in a portable cradle right on our doorstep. This was a first for me. I'd taken in countless strays, but a child? Lily was peering into the cradle with a curious gaze. "Look, Mommy, it's a boy. He's my brother." I knelt beside the cradle, my heart sinking. "Lily, sweetheart, this isn't our baby. Someone must have left him here by mistake." But Lily was persistent, her small face serious as she said, "No, Mom, there was a note. It said he's Daddy's son, so he's my brother." Before I could respond, James appeared, his face unreadable in the dim porch light. "What's all this?" he asked, his voice tinged with a forced casualness that didn't sit right with me. Lily was quick to answer, "Daddy, it's your baby. The note said so." James let out a stiff, uneasy chuckle. "You must have dreamt that, kiddo. There was no note." Lily's brow furrowed, frustrated. "There was. But now it's gone." James's eyes met mine, something fleeting in his glance that I couldn't place. He turned to Lily, his tone firm, almost harsh. "It's late, Lily. Go to bed now. We'll sort this out." "But Daddy." "Lily, bed. Now," James interrupted, pointing sternly towards the stairs. Lily, crestfallen and muttering, trudged back upstairs. I turned to James, my voice low and urgent. "We need to call the police, James. This is serious. We can't just keep someone's child." He was quick to dismiss me, his whisper sharp. "Let's not overreact. We could take him in, couldn't we? After all, it's a boy, just what we wanted." His words stunned me, the implication chilling. "James, are you listening to yourself? This is a child, not a stray pup that wandered in. We're talking to the police." His face darkened, and he stepped closer. "No police. We're not involving them. I'm going to bed." Once James retreated to his room, I managed to calm the little one. As he slept, I carefully snipped a few locks of his hair, planning to get a DNA test done. This wasn't a decision I took lightly, but my gut told me it was necessary. The next morning, I acted like everything was normal. I watched as James left for work, his demeanor unreadable. Once he was gone, I called the police. They came and took the baby to ensure he was cared for properly. That evening, when James returned and discovered what I had done, he exploded in anger, making a huge scene. "Why would you call them? We could have handled this ourselves," he yelled, his face red with frustration. His reaction only deepened my suspicions. I kept my calm, though, not letting on how much I already suspected. It's the right thing to do, James. That child could have a family looking for him, I said, trying to reason with him. His responses were evasive, spinning more questions in my mind. I decided then to reach out to a private detective. Meanwhile, I also realized we might need money for all these expenses, lawyers, detectives, who knew what else. So, I checked our joint bank account. My heart sank when I saw it nearly empty. $30,000, saved for Lily's education, gone. I confronted James over the phone. "Where's the money from our account?" "The $30,000? I asked, my voice firm, trying not to let the anger show. "Oh, that. I had to help my brother out, he was in some serious debt," James stammered, his explanation sounding rehearsed. Right then, I knew he was lying. Not wanting to show my hand just yet, I simply replied, "I see." But internally, I was seething. This confirmed my decision to hire the detective. With my personal savings, I took the baby's hair and some from James's comb to a clinic for DNA testing. The process was straightforward, but waiting for the results was agonizing. During that time, I tried to keep things normal at home, especially for Lily's sake, but the atmosphere was tense. 2 weeks later, I received the call from the clinic. The results were as I feared, the child was indeed James's son. I said nothing to James, waiting instead for the detective's report to see the full picture. A week after getting the DNA results, I met with the detective. James had an affair with a woman who then gave birth to his son. They had planned to be a family until she met someone wealthier and decided to abandon the child with James, disrupting her new plans. The detective explained everything in a low, even tone, but each word was a hammer to my heart. "Once she found the other guy, your husband's son became inconvenient. That's why the baby ended up on your doorstep." With the address from the private detective in hand, I drove to the mistress's apartment, a mix of anger and disbelief churning inside me. The whole ride there, I kept thinking about the baby, about James, and about the betrayal that had unfolded so shockingly. When I arrived, I didn't even hesitate at the door. I knocked sharply, my heart pounding in my chest. The door swung open, and there he was, James, looking like he'd seen a ghost. The color drained from his face when he saw me. "What are you doing here, Amelia?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I pushed past him into the apartment, my eyes quickly finding the woman who had turned my life upside down. She was as I imagined, only now wearing a panicked look as she saw me. "I'm not here to cause a scene," I said, my voice cold and steady. "I just want to know one thing. How could you leave a baby, your baby, alone on the street like that?" The mistress, her back stiffening, responded with a shrug that made my skin crawl. "I didn't want the child. James wanted a son, so I left him with you guys to raise." Her nonchalance about the whole thing infuriated me, but before I could reply, the doorbell rang. She looked visibly shaken, moving quickly to answer it. A man entered, confusion written all over his face. "Who are these people, Julia?" he asked, his tone cautious. Julia, the mistress, forced a nervous laugh. "Oh, they're just some friends. They were just leaving." But I couldn't let this go, not now. I stepped forward, meeting the eyes of the man who clearly expected a different kind of evening. "I'm James's wife, and this is our life she's been meddling with. She left her newborn with us because she thought she could get rid of the baby that easily when she found you," I said, the words bitter as they came out. The man, now pale, turned to Julia. "Is this true?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, no lies coming to her aid this time. The man's face hardened as he looked from her to James and then back to me. "I want no part of this," he said, and without another word, he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the hall. James tried to reach for me, his hands outstretched, pleading. "Amelia, please, I can explain. There's nothing you can say that will fix this. I'm filing for divorce." I cut him off, my voice trembling not just with anger but with a profound sadness. Julia's eyes were on James now. "Don't leave me, not now. We can be a family, with our son," she begged, desperation coloring her every word. The cynicism of her plea, the ease with which she shifted her allegiances, it was all too much. I turned to James, my decision clear. "I can't do this anymore." Without waiting for his response, I left the apartment. My next stop was the police station. I filed a formal complaint against James's mistress for abandoning her child, an act that endangered his safety. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic, but his face was etched with the seriousness of the situation. From there, I went directly to the custody service. I argued fervently that the mistress should be stripped of her maternal rights. The caseworker assigned to the case took notes intently as I spoke. "We'll need to conduct a thorough investigation. It will take time," she explained. "I understand, but please consider the child's safety above all," I urged, the image of the abandoned baby still vivid in my mind. Feeling like I had started a necessary process, I then turned my attention to the impending legal battle with James. I contacted a lawyer, one recommended by my best friend who had gone through her own divorce. The lawyer, Mr. Green, was a stout man with a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately made me feel I was in capable hands. "We'll need a strong strategy, especially if you're seeking financial compensation and custody," Mr. Green said during our first meeting. "I want to ensure my daughter's future is secure, and I want back every penny James took from our joint account," I declared, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Mr. Green nodded, jotting down notes. "The total amount withdrawn was $30,000, I answered. "He used our savings, money that was meant for our daughter's education, for the needs of his mistress." "That's a substantial sum. We'll also pursue alimony, given his lack of interest in co-parenting, and compensation for adultery," Mr. Green added, already flipping through his calendar for court dates. The legal proceedings that followed were lengthy and grueling. In court, James and his mistress were defensive, their behavior erratic. The judge frequently reprimanded them for their conduct, which ranged from interruptive outbursts to outright disrespect. On one particularly tense day in court, after James had tried to explain away his actions with feeble excuses, I had my turn to speak. "Your Honor, he not only betrayed our family but also mismanaged our finances, jeopardizing our daughter's future," I stated clearly, meeting the judge's gaze. "I seek full restitution and appropriate alimony to provide for her upbringing." When the final gavel came down, it was a relief. The judge awarded me the full $139,000, citing the clear financial misconduct and James's lack of participation in parenting. He also granted me custody of Lily, with James required to pay alimony. The money, when it finally came through, was immediately set aside for Lily's education. It wasn't just a victory in court, it was a promise to my daughter that I would always fight for her, no matter what. One crisp morning, I sat down with Lily at our kitchen table, her small fingers clumsily spreading jam on her toast. She looked up at me with those big, curious eyes, her brow furrowed in thought. "Mommy, why don't we see Daddy anymore?" she asked, her voice soft and uncertain. I paused, considering how to explain the complexities of adult problems to a child whose world shouldn't have to include such worries. "Well, honey, sometimes people need a little time apart to understand how to be the best they can be," I started, trying to keep my tone light but honest. "It doesn't mean Daddy doesn't love you." Lily nodded, taking this in. "Do you still love Daddy?" The question stung a little, not out of pain for James, but for the innocence Lily still held. "I'll always care about him, because he's your dad. But sometimes love changes, and that's okay." A year after everything came crashing down, life finally seemed to find a rhythm again. Lily and I had settled into our new reality. The store was thriving, and the community around us had rallied in ways I'd never imagined, supporting both our business and our spirits. Then, one sunny afternoon, I received a call that would change the course of our lives once more. It was from the custody service. The news was heavy. My ex-husband's mistress had been stripped of her parental rights, and shockingly, James hadn't stepped in to take his son, despite all his previous claims of wanting a boy to carry on his name. The little boy was placed in an orphanage. My heart broke hearing that. No child should have to go through such abandonment. I talked to Lily about it that evening. "Lily, you remember the little boy we found on our doorstep? Your brother?" I started, unsure how to approach the topic. "Yeah, Mommy. Is he okay?" Her small face was filled with concern. I sighed, gathering my thoughts. "He's in an orphanage, sweetheart. His mom can't take care of him, and your dad, he isn't there for him either." Lily looked thoughtful for a moment, then her expression hardened with resolve. "Can he come live with us? He's my brother." Her innocence and compassion were overwhelming. "Would you like that?" I asked, although her mind seemed made up. "Yes, I want to help him. He's family, right?" Her certainty made up my mind. The next day, I contacted the custody service to inquire about the process of adopting him. The paperwork was daunting, the road filled with legal intricacies, but the thought of that little boy alone in the world propelled me forward. The months that followed were a whirlwind. I visited the orphanage regularly, each time my heart aching at the sight of so many children without families. James's son, Ben, was a quiet, watchful child. Each visit, he grew more accustomed to me. One afternoon, as I was leaving, he tugged at my hand, his small voice calling after me, "Mommy, will you come back?" His words struck a chord deep within me. "Always, Ben. I'll always come back for you." It took 6 months of visits, meetings, and countless signatures before I got the call. The adoption was approved. I was overjoyed and terrified all at once. I rushed to the orphanage to tell Ben the news. When I arrived, he was playing in the yard, his little figure dwarfed by the big toys around him. As I approached, he spotted me and ran over, his small arms lifted in anticipation. I scooped him up, spinning him around. "Guess what, Ben? You're coming home with us. You're going to be my son and Lily's brother for real," I told him, my voice thick with emotion. Bringing Ben home felt like mending a piece of my heart I hadn't realized was still broken. Lily embraced her role as big sister with a fierce tenderness that only a child could muster. Watching them together, playing, arguing, and just being siblings, filled the house with a chaotic but joyous energy. Ben started school this year, and watching him head off with his backpack almost as big as he is, it fills me with pride. He's adjusted well, and his teachers all say he's a joy to have in class. Lily, ever the protective big sister, always checks on him during their school breaks, making sure no one picks on him. Running the pet store keeps me busy. It's more than just a job, it's a passion. I've expanded our services, hosting community events, and even starting a small adoption center in the back. Watching families come in and leave with a new pet, knowing they're going to a good home, it's incredibly rewarding. As for James, I haven't seen him since the divorce was finalized. I heard through the grapevine he's moved out of state after losing his job and breaking things off with his mistress. Part of me is curious about how he's managing, but mostly, I don't want any part of that drama anymore. My focus is here, with our children, with our life. The other day, Lily and I were repainting the kitchen, a project we decided to tackle together. Ben was at a friend's house, so it was just us girls, splattering paint and sharing laughs. "Mom, do you ever miss things being the way they were before?" Lily asked, her brush pausing mid-stroke. I considered her question, paint can in hand. "Sometimes, I guess. But I love our life now. Don't you?" She dipped her brush in the paint. "Yeah. It's better now. Ben's here, and we're happy. It's just different, that's all." "Different can be good, sweetheart. We've gotten through a lot, and here we are, stronger than ever," I reassured her, giving her a playful nudge with my elbow. Later that week, I had a meeting with the local animal shelter about partnering for an upcoming adoption event. After the meeting, as I was closing up for the day, I took a moment to look around at the life I'd built. From the bustling store filled with customers and their pets, to the community notices pinned up next to the register, to the photos of Lily and Ben at their latest school event. This was my world now, and it was a good one. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the floor of the shop, I locked up and headed home, ready to spend the evening with my kids, maybe watch a movie or play a game. Life had thrown us some curveballs, but here we were, catching every one and throwing them right back.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.